I'm basically the lead developer behind Drupal Commerce version 2. Ryan Zrama, which is the founder of the company Centauro behind Drupal Commerce, is actually responsible for the 1.x version, which is a little bit less maintained than the 2.x version now, because obviously this is that version is for Drupal 7. But basically, I've been working for Centauro for over 5 years, and I've been working with Drupal for around maybe a little bit more than 10 years already. So basically, I think my first real contributions to Drupal started, I think it was probably in 2010 or 11 when I joined Commerce Guys, which is the ancestor of Centauro. And one of my first major contributions was, I believe, payment gateway integration for a French bank, and that was back in the Commerce 1.x early days. So Commerce didn't even have a stable release yet, and that was done for a client project at the time. And before that, I had a little bit of experience with Drupal. I basically discovered Drupal when during an internship, when I was an intern in one of my first internship, basically. Then I've been working for many years. I freelanced for about 3 years, and then I joined Centauro again 5 years ago. And then I was mainly involved in clients projects and doing some commerce contributions from time to time. I still had country modules that I was maintaining around commerce, and Boyan Zivanovic was responsible for Commerce 2.x back then when I joined. And at some point, he actually left the company, and it became the responsibility of Matt Blayman and myself. And then Matt also left, and now it's only me. But yeah, basically, before being the maintainer of Drupal Commerce, I had many years of experience working on different projects and also contributing at the same time. But most of the time, the contributions were for the context of a project. In the context of project. Lessons learned. I basically, over time, I realized that, for example, maintaining such a big project with such a massive ecosystem, it's a lot of responsibility, because you need to pay attention and not introduce regressions. You need to, yeah, basically, so many different people and so many different sites are using Drupal Commerce in so many different ways. So you really have to be careful when you make some changes, and that is why we have test coverage, which is really important. And I think we have way more test coverage than in the first version. So I think that is one of the most important things to keep in mind, because, for example, even when we have a bug report, sometimes doesn't contain enough information, and the best way, the best tool in order to actually fix the issue is to first write a failing test, and then the goal is to basically make the test pass. Yeah, there's a huge impact, and so we really have to be careful when making changes. But well, even though I'm mainly the main developer now, maintaining commerce on a daily basis. There's still a community, and for example, several days ago, I committed uh, some refactoring, some code refactoring, and I forgot two use statements. It didn't really have a big impact, but basically like 10 minutes after I committed the fix, I had somebody from the community that just left a comment on the issue and said, hey, you forgot to remove those two use statements, and then submitted a patch that I then committed. So the community is also testing and watching, and that is really important and useful. We actually have we haven't gathered for more than a year due to the coronavirus, unfortunately, with the team. We had a retreat last year in Greenville right before the pandemic started, and that was great. I mean, basically we are a remote team, and we don't see each other that often. At least before, we used to see each other at Drupal events, which didn't happen because, again, of that virus. And so I'm looking forward to that. And usually when we meet together in person, this really brings a lot of ideas, and this is way more productive than just doing meetings over Zoom. It's but there are many things that are in the works. I'm basically currently having a look at the Drupal 9 compatibility. It's technically compatible, but because of mainly because of the deprecations of the deprecated APIs and all of that, currently the tests are failing. But this doesn't mean that Drupal Commerce is not usable with D9, because we launched some projects with D9 already. But unfortunately, it's hard from within the same branch to actually maintain Drupal 8 and Drupal 9 compatibility at the same time. It became impossible now with Drupal 9.1, basically. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm going to be working on that. Also, we think about DX improvements, admin improvements, bringing several of our contributing modules to stable releases, because we oftentimes have people complaining about the fact that modules are in beta and RC, but this doesn't actually mean that the modules are not usable. It's just that we are being careful, and when we really decide to tag a stable release, that really means that this module is stable. We also have several of our contributing modules that are still in beta or RC, and are still perfectly usable. But yeah, we're going to work in the upcoming months on bringing all of these country modules to stable releases, fixing issues, introducing new features. I don't really have a specific feature in mind, but we have, yeah, some technical fixes, and like I said, admin improvements. And we also work on features that are needed by the merchants that are running our platform. And I actually like when it works this way. So when there's an actual customer need that we try to address, because sometimes I think that's one of the hardest parts when maintaining such a big project, because it's technically, it has to be generic, but it still has to support many different use cases. And sometimes it's actually hard to just guess what feature to work on. And it's better when it comes from actual customers using the platform. we switched our focus to that starting last year. Right after, I would say, our retreat back in February last year. So we started, we actually launched several headless projects, which are successful. And we contributed most of the work that we did, and that's why we created Commerce API, for example, which is the API powering all of these sites. And there's still work that's going to happen there because, for example, I think that module is probably a beta. But what's remaining there is some improvements around payments, performance improvements as well. But we try to improve it on the go when we discover issues or when we realize that we can improve on that part of the code. Or that's, yeah. But headless is one of our focus. It was actually most of the time that I spent last year was around headless projects. It has been a little bit less the case this year because we had full, how do we say that, like full stack Drupal projects. So our focus shifted a bit away from headless for like a couple of months, but it's still really important and one of our priorities because we believe that's also the future. And we for example, talked several times internally about working on a decoupled admin UI so that you can probably launch a Drupal backoffice powered by React, for example. I think we have 2 or 3 projects that are using React as the front end and Drupal as the backend, Drupal Commerce. Personally, enjoy working on these projects because they are challenging and it really helps, separating the concerns and Drupal just feeding the front end with API and resources that the front end needs. And this usually brings improvements because, for example, then while working on this project, we realize, oh, maybe that wasn't really designed for API first. But yeah, I believe that's probably going to be one of our best, one of our major areas that we'll have to think about and focus on when it comes to the even Drupal Commerce 3.x. There's a huge potential, unlimited potential. Well, commerce itself requires help. Even sometimes it's just about testing patches too. For example, I also recently worked on a new feature for commerce shipping because up until recently, you had to click on a button to recalculate the shipping rates, for example. That is now done automatically since the latest version. And for a client project, we recently worked on improvements related to that feature as well. So for example, after the rates are being calculated, now there's an order summary that's on the sidebar. And up until recently as well, that summary wasn't actually reflecting the shipping rates that were applied. And I personally worked on making that happen. There's a patch in the shipping issue queue, for example, that is probably going to be committed soon, but it would be great if we get testers there, for example, commerce core issues, commerce shipping improvements as well. So it's sometimes just about getting feedbacks. Sometimes it's about manual testing. So there's really plenty of help. That's that could, yeah, plenty of areas that could use some help. There's also project base a composer template that I actually recently worked on as well to make it compatible with D9. I created a 9.x branch there so people can just grab the template and install it to use with Drupal 9. But yeah, I believe the best way to test commerce is to spin up the demo project. There's actually, we also contributed, there's actually a React demo available as well. And there's the code is publicly available too. So
Cool.
that should be used as a base. I mean, not a base, but a good implementation example. If you need to launch a headless project, you don't really know where to start with. The payment is working there. You have add to cart, you have a cart page, checkout. It's probably not the best React code because we're mostly backend developers, but at least it works. Contributing isn't that easy actually, because it's sometimes it's true that it's harder than just writing custom code, for example. But basically, when contributing, I think what's good to keep in mind is coding standards, for example. But that is when it comes to a code contribution, because that's not all contributions are actually code contributions. Sometimes we could get help on documentation, also help on, like I said earlier, testing. I think patience is also really important, because sometimes it takes weeks or months to get commit in. So it's even it takes even longer when it comes to Drupal core itself. That is even a level way higher. the barrier is way higher than when it comes to contributing to just the contrib space. But even I recognize myself that even contributing to commerce might not always be easy, because it sometimes requires experience with Drupal. It requires knowledge of the coding standards. Sometimes we also just people submit a patch and then all the tests are failing. So yeah, so I would say that for code contributions, it's really important to, when submitting a patch, ensuring that the tests are not failing, because many times I don't really have a lot of time myself aside of the work I have on my plate, because I'm not spending, unfortunately, I'm not spending 100% of my time maintaining commerce. I also have client projects to worry about. So when I have the time to focus on commerce, I basically favor the issues that are in needs review or reviewed and tested by the community. And if I have, you know, like 3 hours, 4 hours to spare for maintaining commerce, and I open an issue and I see a patch with that has all the tests failing, it's, yeah, sometimes it's, I cannot really do anything about it. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
I always wish I had more time, but I do with the time I have. One of the advices I have too is that oftentimes we see people opening support requests, of like even answering sometimes to support requests is great. When I don't have to do that myself, I see that somebody else jumped in and then replied, and I'm really happy about that. But yes, sometimes I'm also I also like the do-it-yourself approach as well. So for example, there are many things on my side as well. When I use a country module and it doesn't do exactly what I need, I'm not afraid of, taking the module, tweaking it. It's perfectly fine to sometimes even swap services and make some changes. And one of the advices I have too is that when you find a bug or a feature that's really useful and you think can benefit the others, it's really important to contribute it back. It's part of the game, and it's really important. We really try hard to do that as much as we can. When we fix an issue on a project, we really try not to just keep the fix for ourselves, even when it's not commerce related. That's really important, because then that's time, and that's really a gain of time for other companies and people using the project. Even some people, for example, they need payment integration, and they could just do it and keep it for themselves. But for example, I worked on a payment integration a year ago that's for Klarna. I know that for example, some companies could have just built it and keep it for themselves, but by contributing it back, we got many fixes and improvements from other companies that also needed that module. So it's really important, because that, in the end, it benefited us as well. To me, having kids, I think one of the hardest parts was having kids around, while doing work. So it was challenging, because when the pandemic started, I used to live in much more smaller apartment than what I have today. And I used to work because all the members of our companies, we all work remotely. We are completely distributed. So we were actually used to working from home before. So that aspect didn't really change much, but the one big change on my side was really having the kids around. That was the hardest part. And not being able to being I mean, I personally live in Israel, which was successful in beating the pandemic. So that was a good thing. We had vaccines early. Our first lockdown was successful, but we actually had 3 lockdowns in total, which is a lot. And it was a year where there was a lot of weeks and months without schools, and that's really, on my side, that was the most complicated thing, knowing how to occupy the kids and what to do with them, and how, because it also affected them. It was also hard for kids, because being home, the kids want to go out, they want to release their energy. But I was lucky in a way that I have really young kids. I have 2 daughters. One is 4 now, and the other one is she actually was born during the pandemic. So that was also challenging, because delivering a baby with a face mask wasn't the best experience, and nobody could visit us, and I had to keep a mask the entire time. My wife had to do a COVID test, and this has been a crazy year. But I'm happy to see that the situation is going back to normal in most of the countries, and I'm hoping it stays that way, because I also really miss going to Drupal events, traveling, which was I really enjoy traveling, and my last travel was actually that retreat in Greenville last year, which was also a business trip. So it wasn't really just fun, but it was great. But I really miss meeting people, traveling, and I'm also originally from France, so I haven't really seen my family in a long time. So the last time I actually saw my mother was in December 2019. So it starts to be a lot. That's a good question because I've been really bad at attending virtual events, but I practically didn't attend the Signal one. I think I mean watched the keynotes from not live and after the fact. For example, for the last DrupalCon. Yeah, I'm not the I'm not a good example because I believe that the point of conference of a tech conference is also to meet in person. So I really personally prefer like actual real conferences in person. So I don't really have good advices on what I preferred with virtual conferences because I was actually bad and didn't attend. I don't think I even attended a single one, to be honest. I really have good memories of it. It was the Drupal Developers Days in Barcelona many years ago, and I really enjoyed it. You know, I think it was around this time, maybe it was in May. The weather was perfect, and at the time I used to live in Paris, so you know, uh, escaping the bad weather in Paris to go to meet in Barcelona in person, and you know, there was an event in the beach that I remember, and that was really enjoyable. I really miss that, and you know, since I actually already work from home most of the time, don't actually go to an office, I really miss that aspect. I also miss very much seeing my coworkers and colleagues, and I'm looking forward to that. And hopefully that will change this year, and hoping that the COVID situation is behind us. That is one of my wishes for this year.